I'm Matt Holcomb.
And I'm Ariel.
And we've been married for about 17 years. We're from Texas. We met in college and got married our senior year. Shortly after that, in 2007, I joined the Marine Corps and was able to, eventually went through flight school and ended up flying the F-18. And I've done that for about the last 15 years. And just a few months ago, retired from doing that. Now we're just waiting to see what's next. Now that I have to grow up, and so still kind of waiting to see where that leads.
Yeah, absolutely. And right after Matt and I got married, I started my first job as a third grade teacher. So I taught elementary school for several years in the beginning of our marriage in several different states. So I got some pretty varied experience there, which was really interesting. And at the time, I didn't realize that it was really influential in preparing me for what I do now, which is I'm a homeschooling mom. I homeschool our two children who, like Matt said, they're 8 and 5 years old, and we are part of a community called Classical Conversations, and we've been doing that since we started homeschooling our children. It's a classical model where parents collaborate with an organization as a whole just to teach our children classically. And my favorite thing about doing that, what appealed to us most, is that it allows us the opportunity to teach our children from a biblical worldview, which we're very passionate about. Really, I'm a homeschooling mom. I do the school thing, I do the mom thing, definitely not last or least, I do the wife thing. I have a wonderful opportunity to pour into my home and serve my family, kind of build the kind of relationships as a family that we think will be a blessing to us in the long haul and ultimately will glorify God. Well, I remember very distinctly how I became aware of Dr. Dobson's ministries. I was about 18 years old. I was in college and I was driving in my car to my part-time job, and I heard his voice come on the radio, and I was intrigued. And so I started listening, and I remember thinking, I like what this man is saying. Like, I feel like he's telling me the truth. I think I can listen to this. And as a young 18-year-old girl, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. This was new information to me. So I think that first broadcast that I listened to, and after that, I made sure that I listened to him as often as I could. And then as the years went on, Matt and I we got married, and I was an elementary school teacher for the first few years of our marriage. And I found out about Dr. Dobson's book called Dare to Discipline, and I read that book in preparation for becoming an elementary school teacher. I read many of his books, and I was already starting to think about being a parent at that age. And I think it all kind of hinged back on realizing that what he said was true. And as a non-Christian, a non-believer at that time, I didn't understand that the reason that I thought that his words were true was because they were coming straight out of Scripture. That was the truth which Dr. Dobson was appealing to and including in all of his information, and the truth itself is what really struck me about Dr. Dobson's message and his ministries.
Yeah, I was introduced a lot earlier. Unfortunately for me, my mother read Dare to Discipline, so I was very familiar with
that method.
Yeah, but as we began to date, we started listening to Dr. Dobson. So he has always been an influence in my life, certainly for the good.
Yeah, I think it was fortunate for you that your mom read that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely been a blessing for our children too. Like, we can't count how many times when we were learning how to discipline our children in the beginning, we would just look at each other and say, what would Dr. Dobson do in this situation? What would Shirley Dobson do? What would they tell us to do right now? And we would lean on that.
Fortunately, he wrote a lot of books that help you.
For sure.